Hello, everybody, and welcome to the Prep Talk podcast, hosted by myself and Max Anthony FBA. Today, we welcome Saul at Saul Sells Stuff onto the pod. Saul is the co-owner of the Buy Box. He is a very experienced seller, offering a unique perspective to our audience. Today, we will explore in depth his experience with Amazon to Amazon flips and dive into the unique perspective he has on the Amazon ecosystem as a whole. So Saul, thank you for joining. We're happy to have you.
Yeah, happy to be here. It's I mean, people don't know, like, this is like my first time meeting Max, and Pete and I literally just met the other day, so it was really cool to get your DM and just kind of make it happen really quickly.
Yeah. So I know that a goal of yours for 2024 is to, be on more podcasts and share more of, of your perspective. Do you want to walk us through kind of your Amazon journey? The good, the bad, and the ugly. We'll go from there.
Yeah, sure. I'll try to do the cliff notes. I don't want to
Okay.
bore anyone. So I've been selling since very early 2017, so it's gonna be pretty close to, I mean, what is that? That's three. I mean, it'll be 7, 8 years here shortly. I'm just coming up on 8. I started when I was 23 years old, and I at the time was working. So I hadn't finished college. I had essentially done most of school, but like stopped because I need to go get a full-time job. Because my mom was like, "Hey, maybe you should leave the house," and so I I got a full-time job. I was like hustling there. I worked my way up to middle management, if you will. So I had a cubicle-ish thing. I had my own office, but it wasn't like glamorous. I had about a staff of 25, and I was managing a local health fitness center, right? So like think of like an LA Fitness, but primarily for people that have some kind of medical condition. So we partner with hospitals. So we had people that were, had cancer, diabetes, Alzheimer's, like things like that. So it was a little ritzier, but it came with some challenges, and I needed an out. I had a girlfriend at the time, and I was doing 50, 60 hours a week. I was like leaving work and taking work home with me, and we were open 5 a.m. to 10 p.m. every single day, and it was my job to make sure someone was there. So like, as you can imagine, if someone called out at 4:30 in the morning, like that was me.
Oh no.
And I started to get like triggered by phone calls and
Yeah.
text messages early morning because it was like freaking me out. And I distinctly remember the first apartment we ever moved into. As we were unpacking, my like person that opened 3 days a week called me and quit. And it was just like one of those, like, you sit on the floor and you're like, I just don't want to do this life
Yeah.
anymore. And so I read a bunch of blogs. It's actually the online selling experiment. I don't know if you know him. He's like an OG in the space, and he was the one that like kind of put arbitrage to me on the map. He got like interviewed by CNN, and he was like doing the Walmart flips, but this was 10 years ago, and like
Right.
it was a big deal. And he has a great blog, still active. And I just started. I watched a bunch of other pods. I started the same way everyone does, and I started with books. Like,
Yep.
that's just like the easiest way in.
100%.
So I was thrifting, doing books on Amazon. I was doing used clothes on eBay. I had the whole setup. At one point had like my mom help me take pictures. Like, I was just trying to do whatever worked. For books, I ended up doing some level of Gaylords, which, if you don't know what a Gaylord is like giant boxes filled with usually unpicked books, which are kind of a pain in the butt, but you can get pretty cheap.
Yep.
And that led me to retail arbitrage. That led me to online arbitrage. That led me to A2A. And so I did that and worked full time for like a year and a half. I ended up quitting my job because I just couldn't take it anymore. And I was like, I have to commit. I don't have responsibilities. I had $1,300 a month in rent. I had like, I was still young enough where I was on my parents' health insurance. Like, everything was just
Dude.
like, I can take this risk.
Yep.
That's something else we'll talk about later. I think it was a good risk to take. It didn't work out for me, and I could talk about the reasons why.
Yep.
But that was when I was really faced with like time management issues, with capital issues, those kind of things. And so I'll speed this trajectory up a little bit. So anyway, that was like 2018, 2019. Because I had kind of failed at being full time, I got a side job as a sales assistant, like selling. Essentially, I was selling for commission, and still doing Amazon. And that's when we were doing okay. Like, I think it was like mid 6 figures in 2019. It was like good enough where it was like, okay, we can do something here, but not good enough where I can live and like propose, have a wedding, buy a house. Like, that was not going to happen with my income.
Yep.
And so I just kept doing the commission thing. We started teaching friends and family who also wanted to do like a side hustle, and that really opened the door to like, this is enjoyable, like making content and talking about this and teaching. And that was 2019. And then 2020, we kind of started like a pseudo group inside another big reselling group on Discord, just like help their members. And I, at that point in time, because of Amazon, because I had been selling and knowing and doing e-commerce, I got introduced to other people in the e-commerce space, like the network effect. Just when you tell people what you do, like don't shy away from it. Like tell them like, hey,
Yep.
I sell online, I sell on Amazon. There was someone that had started a Shopify business. They were doing like $300,000-$400,000 a year, and they wanted to get into Amazon day one. And I was like, I will help you for
Yes.
free.
Yeah. Right.
And sometimes you just have to say yes to things you have no idea what you're doing,
Yeah.
because it forces you to learn. And I had never done brand management at that point. I had never done registering a brand on Amazon and managing, but I said sure. And that actually turned into probably one of the best yeses of my life, because fast forward 4 years, I'm now co-owner of that brand. And I worked for 2 or 3 months for free. I worked for a year for like okay-ish money, and then ultimately she brought me on as a co-founder, gave me a bunch of equity, and like gave me,
Awesome.
now that company, and now we're doing 7 figures, and that allows me to like pay the mortgage.
Right.
And then that, it's like cheat code if you can do like something else and Amazon at the same time, because
Yep.
Amazon, like, you just don't need to take profit from it, and it's like an endless scaling machine. And so then 2021, we started the Buy Box, and that was kind of like, we had 2 years of teaching people how to do Amazon in this other group. We wanted to launch ourselves. It was super successful at the beginning. I mean, we had like 600, 700 members that like first 2 months.
Wow.
And, we haven't really we haven't gone back since. I think for me, the Buy Box is first and foremost a support server, and that's what it always will be. I kick myself a little bit because I think we were one of the very first to like do this on Discord, do this on Twitter,
Yep.
and I would love, like, perfect word, I'd love to have a little bit more of a presence, like people to know a little bit more about us. But that just comes down to like the marketing. Like I don't talk about it a whole lot. I didn't
Right.
really take Twitter seriously until 2023. It just is not in my bones. So we exist and we're happy with that. Could we be bigger? Absolutely, but we're still to this day focused on being a support server, trying to bridge the gap between seller support and you as a seller, giving you a bunch of content, videos, and things to make it easier. And in the process, built some really cool tools, so we can get into like A2A is a big factor of what I do. So we've taken most of the money that we've made from membership in the Buy Box from day one and invested it in SaaS and tools. I think to date, over $100,000 invested in these developers and into these products. And selfishly, a lot of it is because like I wanted to build it for me.
Yep.
And then we just put it in there for anyone to use.
Right.
And it's been really fun. And I think being on Twitter more recently in the last 7-8 months has like put gas to that fire, because
Yep.
I get to meet cool guys like you and get to see what's going on. And it's nice when you get to hear from 500, 600 people their problems, but it's nicer when you get to hear from 3 or 4,000 people.
Right.
And the more you understand the issues, the more you can help fix them. And that's like ultimately at the end of the day what we're trying to do. So yeah, as of today, still selling Amazon. Have sold, as I said, every year since. Still co-own the Shopify business. Still do the Buy Box. Have a couple other things like Storefront Stalker Pro and other tools that we've launched. But it's a journey, man. And I'm happy to be on it. And I'm happy to set goals for myself and like box myself in that. Like my goals have changed in the last 7 years. Like I don't want Amazon to be $10 million a year just with Amazon. It was massively stressful when I relied just on Amazon for my income.
Yeah.
And I really don't want to go back to that.
Yeah.
But yeah, so that was a lot, but that was like kind of, even like a slightly abridged version of me and where I am. So I'm about to be 31 years old now.
Okay.
And I have no intention of stopping Amazon ever, because it's fun. but I'm definitely going to do other things too to try to stack the odds in my favor that I get to retire a little bit earlier.
Right, right. I mean, absolutely, like a ton to unpack there. It's been a full journey of, maybe struggling at the very beginning, taking on a decent amount of risk, but at the right time in the right situation.
Mm.
So I'm curious your perspective on being a seasoned seller. Where do you see, folks maybe not gauging that risk appropriately, and where do you think that there are opportunities to kind of, put the caution sign up on some, avenues for some? I'm curious to hear what your thoughts are.
Yeah, I mean, I think, if I can take anything from my story, number one, I think the people that we are seeing most active on social media, like those are like the people that are going to be most active are usually the ones that are going to be like doing something aggressive, like $100,000 months and like these big numbers, and those are wonderful. There's a massive pool of people that lurk that are like somewhere in like the 1,000 to 20,000 range, right? Like they're
Yep.
like figuring it out. Um, and I guess I would talk to them first than the bigger guys. I think going backwards to me, the longer you can keep your money in the business, the easier it will be for you to grow. And I think one of the very first things I did wrong was start taking profit too early. Now I know like we all want to get paid and we have bills to pay. And if you started Amazon with the intent of like paying your $300 a month car bill or like paying your student loans, then certainly you should take that money out and do that. But then understand that you're not going to grow as quickly as you might want to in other ways. And so when I went full time, I think there's a realization of, okay, I have $2,000 a month in personal debt that I need to pay each month.
Mhm.
That's $2,000 less than I get to then invest in new inventory. So realistically, in order for me to grow, I need to be profiting $5,000 a month just so I can take 3,000 of that and actually invest it. Now, if you're only profiting 2,500, you're stagnant at that point. Like you will not grow. And the bigger your debt, like the bigger your debt is, like the nicer the car, the bigger the house, the more you end up having to profit
Yep.
just to break even on like what you're actively doing. And
100%.
that is a terrifying thing to like actually experience firsthand. Um, Especially, if your account gets shut down or something happens. So
Mhm.
I think for me, it's number one, obviously understand your numbers. Like, no, I try to use like the double rule, and I think a lot of us do. Like, if you're going to think about going full time on Amazon, I would want you to at least be making twice as much
Yep.
as your monthly debt. Like whatever it is that you feel 100% you have to pay each month, food, gas, all that, you should be profiting double that.
Right.
And then you're like, okay, I'm kind of in a position where going full time makes sense. Um, Looking forward, your debt today is not the debt tomorrow. So, at 23 years old, I had very different debt that I had at 25. And so you might be in a situation where you live at home and you don't have to pay health insurance and you have a beater car and like you can go all in and that's amazing. But fast forward to like when you can't live at home anymore and when you have to pay $600 a month in health insurance and when you like potentially student debt comes back in or you want to rent something or you want to propose, there is like figure out what that is going to look like and
Yep.
understand that you're going to have to like increase your profits to meet that.
Right.
And if you don't, you're quickly gonna find that you have less money to actually invest into the business and like scale it where you want to be. And so it seems like a lot of doom and gloom. It isn't. It's just I don't want people to wake up and realize they're underwater because that is a terrible feeling.
Yep.
And it's a trap when you like realize that your debt is going to outweigh your profit, and the only way to get out of that is to take on more debt, and
Right. Right.
that is horrible.
Right. Right. I mean, I don't think that I felt more freedom than when I just offloaded a car. Like I just sold it, didn't have the
Mhm.
payment, didn't have the insurance. We went down to one car for our family, and it's an amazing feeling because you just there's less pressure. You can go focus on other things.
Oh yeah,
Um,
just wait till I have no mortgage. I'm a dangerous man.
Yes, right, exactly, exactly. But and I think for maybe more directed at like the younger audience, um, it's very easy to understand the circumstances that you're currently in, but you don't know what's going to happen in the next 3 to 4 years of your life because those are formative years that are going to change how you view life. So just being aware of that is super important, I think.
I think too, like the younger generation, I guess COVID was definitely kind of an event in life, but I mean, I was just old enough to kind of remember 2008. And so I just remember on the news and seeing people around me, like, people I knew, things being lost, and just overall big downturn in quality of life for a lot of people.
Yep.
And so I kind of like scarred me early on. And so I guess I'm maybe in not protective mode, but I'm not thinking about buying a flashy car or, something that is just a depreciating asset. I'm more focused on building longevity and building that moat so I don't ever have to worry about anything again, and building out, different, exposures so that, if something goes wrong here, okay, well, I have this, and, diversifying my portfolio. So yeah, I think some of the new kids, they get, their first 10, 20K month profit, and they're like, oh man, I'm rich. And it's like, well, hold on.
It'll go fast.
Damn. Yeah, pipe the brakes a little bit.
It's a good start. It's a hell of a start.
Oh,
No,
absolutely.
it's a great start. I mean, I kind of equivalent to, like, if you're making $10,000 profit a month on Amazon, it's about 60 grand salary. Like,
That's
it's
awesome.
kind of like you going out and getting a job in like the $55,000-$60,000 range, which is great.
Mhm.
Like, don't get me wrong, especially if you're 21, 20 years old. But I think what they see is $120,000 a year.
100%.
And like, that's that's fine if you didn't want to do anything else with your business, and obviously you have taxes and there's other things on top of that. And that's what I think that it does scare me for them. And I don't want anyone to hear this and be like, oh man, these guys are against me like chat scaling up there to the moon, and like and we're not. I think it's just like kind of learn from the mistakes of others ahead of you, and understand that if you want to get to $50,000 months or $100,000 profit months, is going to take in reinvesting essentially all of that.
Yep.
And so I always, at the beginning, I made the mistake of, when I had a really good sourcing day, and so I'm okay if some people do this, but this is for me, I felt it was a mistake. When I had a really good sourcing day, I would get Chipotle. I would get something like, I would eat out. I'd get Starbucks. I'd be like, I earned this. I deserve this $8 meal. Back then it was $8, right? Or $7. Like I deserve this meal. And the reality is, like, I had a switch where I was like, that's not my money. That's my business's money.
Yeah.
Like, that $8 doesn't belong to me. And once I did that, it felt way easier to like not get those things, because my business is profitable. My business is doing great, but my business pays me. And maybe I don't make nearly as much as my business does. And that's the goal. And so once you kind of like get your head around that, you start living to get that business where you want it to be, but you have to worry about like how much you're getting paid from that is how much you can actually use. That money's not yours. That money belongs somewhere else. It needs to be leveraged elsewhere.
100%. And I think at a bare minimum, you should go through a full cycle. Like, go through tax season, go through the accountant and have them tell you what is going on, because especially in OA, there's a lot of moving pieces. You may not understand that you have a ton of leakage. You may not understand, that maybe you didn't decipher the calculator properly. You didn't factor in return. So let them teach you and go through that process, and then you'll be able to make a better, a more like responsible decision about the next, what do the next couple of years look like for you?
Yeah. And a full cycle of selling too. I mean, it's tough when someone starts in September and they quits their job in February. And I'm like, well, that's great. You just had like the best 5 months of your selling career, which are going to happen every year. But let's talk about the next 6 months that are going to be a little bit slower. And are you prepared for that now?
Right.
And maybe you are, and maybe this is going to work out for you. And I always say, like, in the buy box, like, it's not my job to make decisions for you,
right? But
it's my job to teach you the like potential issues of the decision that you're making. Like, I want to walk you through both options so you fully understand them, and then you can go make whatever decision you want. But I don't want to sit here thinking like I led you the wrong way, or that you didn't have everything you needed to make that calculated risk. So by all means, like, I will be your biggest cheerleader if you decide to go full time after 5 months, as long as you understand what you're actually saying yes to.
Yeah. Well, I mean, especially if you start like right before Q4, and then you rip from the beginning, that's
Yeah.
a high that most people are gonna, kind of expect or hope repeats, but not gonna repeat for the next, 9 months, right?
It'll be harder. It's gonna take
Yeah,
a lot more effort and
right.
figuring it out how to get there.
Yep.
COVID did that too, right? I mean,
Oh yeah,
that was like people had that year and a half or 2 years of COVID money, and it was
that
like,
was wild.
I'm gonna make 100 million, and then things come back to earth. Like everything always regresses to the mean at some point. You just got to
Mhm.
ride that as long as you can and stash it, stash it.
Yep.
I never want to rely on one source of income personally. It's terrifying for me and my upbringing in my life. Um, I've seen that firsthand with my parents, and so yeah, so that's like Amazon is a cash cow, and you should leverage it till the end. But
Yep.
ideally, either build a sellable business on Amazon, a private label, wholesale, something, or take your earnings from OA, RA, etc., and invest them elsewhere, so you don't have to rely on just that one thing.
I 100% agree with that. I see that a lot in my 9 to 5. So I see the conversations that folks are willing to have because that's their one source of income, right? And so they're strapped to it. So they maybe won't speak up for themselves, or that
Sure.
they'll take on additional responsibilities, whatever the case may be. And I kind of feel for them, and I look at I would say that I probably have been more outspoken since finding some success, and also gathering some skills from the Amazon space a little, that's helped.
Mhm.
But there, not having more than one income source is a terrifying way to live, in my opinion.
Yeah,
Some people do it, and I respect them for it, but it's hard. You have all your eggs in one basket.
it is. It is very tough. Yeah, you can't take risks, to your point, at
Right.
work. You
Yep.
can't. You have to be afraid a little bit
Yeah.
of it ending for whatever reason, and sometimes it's out of your control. Sometimes the company just goes belly up, or
Hmm.
layoffs occur. So it's a great, if people listening to this are crushing it, but they're just crushing it through one source, I highly recommend starting to at least consider diversifying a little bit.
What was the moment where you kind of knew, like, did you wait for that double income that you knew, okay, I'm making twice as much I am at my job, good to go, see ya, and I quit? Or was it kind of like a moment or a series of moments, or kind of how did that transition go about?
Yeah, I mean and this is why I try to teach from my decisions. I think um, I wasn't I wasn't thinking the right way at the time, right? I wasn't. If no one, I didn't have. I'm sure there were people in my corner saying similar things what I'm saying now, but I either didn't listen to them or I wasn't paying enough attention. And it was an emotional decision because I was burnt out. I was getting to the end of my rope at my whatever my 5 to 10, and I couldn't do it anymore. And I thought this is the misconception. I was like, okay, if I'm doing X dollars part time, I can double this full time,
Hmm.
right? There's no way that I can't do that.
Right.
And there was a way that I couldn't do that.
It turns out.
uh, and again, like this is very much, it's situational. Like I think if I was a different human at the time, maybe I could have. Um, I think there is this feeling when you have multiple jobs or multiple responsibilities, when you're goldfish, right? Like you fill the time you have. And so if you only have 2 hours to source a day, you will find things in those 2 hours. If you have 10 hours, you might find the same things you found in 2 hours because you will fill your time. That's what humans do. We fill the time that we have. And I did not get around time management correctly. I didn't create a good strategy and schedule for me to follow, and things got away from me. Um, and again, at the time, it was like I had these sources that were crushing, and then 2 months later, they stopped, and I wasn't prepared to like find new ones as
Mhm.
quickly. And so then I had to start dipping into savings. I had to start dipping into debt, and then I had interest payments,
Ooh.
and then it was just a revolving cycle of like getting
Yep.
behind or like having to constantly spend more than I actually had.
Yep.
And so yeah, smart Saul would have stayed at the job.
Yep.
And again, I think there are people that could leave and do it, but I think there's more people that leave and can't. And so I just try to like share my journey of, I call it a failure, right? Like I think I learned a lot, so it wasn't a true failure in
Yep.
the truest sense, but I couldn't manage it full time more than a year and a half at 23 years old. it just didn't work for me.
Yep.
And I was letting, my girlfriend down. I felt bad. I felt guilty every day.
Yep.
That's tough. That's
So
like
go
worse.
ahead, Max.
Yeah. What are you saying?
Oh, so I'm curious. You said that you really struggle with time management. What has changed to allow you to better manage your time? Are there best practices? How are you doing that better than you were?
I think I've given in and embraced calendars.
Oh no. Yes.
I used to hate the word plan, man. It's the worst four-letter word in the dictionary. And so I have to now. You're kind of forced into it when you have multiple things you have to do. And Google Calendar, I love that. Like that's kind of my first like true north of what I have to do each and every day at the minimum. And then be honest, I'm still figuring out the best way for me to manage daily tasks. I've tried a number of things. I really like Asana. I use that for a bunch, and I really like that. I'm currently using Notion a lot, but there's something about pen and paper also that's just like really rewarding.
Yep.
And so it's like Rocket Notebook, I think, or something that like I've been toying with getting that. Like it's kind of like you write it down, but you take a picture of it, and it goes into like an app, so it's like digital and
Cool.
not. So it's a balance. I think what I try to do though now is at least have a manageable to-do list that I write at the end of every day. So at nighttime, I'm writing my to-do list for the morning or for the next day.
Mhm.
And you got to be kind to yourself though. Like if you give yourself too many things to do, you will ultimately not do all of them, and then that doesn't feel good.
No.
And so you only write on there what you absolutely have to do, and then you can add things to it later. But I don't want to see a list of 20 things because I don't have 20 things to do. I may feel like I do, but I don't. I have 5 things to do. Like there are 5 like must-haves. And then my calendar. I live to it. But I put a lot of effort into my work-life balance because I've burnt out. I know I burn out as a human. And as I said, I'm about to be 31 years old. I have a wife now. I have 2 dogs. I make sure that I have time for them. So like that is a non-negotiable for me. So like I have dinner every night for the most part with my
I know.
wife.
We're
There's
pulling
things like
you
this
from
that pop up. It's okay. There are things like this, but for the most part, like 5 out of 7 days I'll have dinner with them. I see my in-laws a lot. They're pretty close. Like I play with the dogs every morning. They're like those are things that I need as a human to like not want to just curl up in the corner. So it's a balance. I think at the end of the day, you got to be kind. You got to like understand that things are going to change, and what works today won't necessarily work tomorrow.
Speaking to the work-life balance, I think one thing I've definitely struggled with is I think when you're growing a business, there's technically always something that you could be doing, right? You can always do more. I could be sourcing.
Always. Yeah. You feel guilty too. Yeah.
Right. How have you kind of like, do you have to like set a timer, or do you just have a set time like you were talking about? Like, hey, I don't care. Of course there's things to do, but I need to pause that and realize that this is okay for me not to be productive right now. I need to reset, and because I feel guilty not doing
it. I get it. The guilt is overwhelming. So when I used to work full time, I would stress out all the time. I was like anxious. I would pace. I was an aggressive pacer, and she was like 63. She was 2 years away from retirement. One day she just had to sit me down. She's like, listen, if you don't do some of these things, no one's gonna die. And for some reason that like really hit me because I was like, this is not life or death. My business obviously needs to live, but like nothing I'm gonna do or not do is gonna result in someone's like peril or like terrible things happening. So that was part 1. Part 2, back to your point, I think you have to like make the conscious decision that doing non-business things is productive.
Yes. 100%. Yes.
And so like, we talked about reading a little bit before the podcast started. I don't obviously, your social life or things, but like making time for yourself or like time for things that will recharge you or feel good or like mentally stimulate you, make you smarter, make you think. Those are just as productive as sitting here and sourcing and looking at your computer. And then number 3, I think it's like totally getting rid of the idea of FOMO. I think that also plagued me. It's like, yes, you could sit down and source for 24 hours a day and buy things, but I guarantee you there will be more things to buy tomorrow.
Yep.
Like there's nothing that can't wait. And there was always endless opportunity. So just because you didn't do it today doesn't mean you can't do it tomorrow. And I am not perfect in this regard either, though. Like I do feel guilty sometimes, but at the end of the day, I do really hard to try to focus on the present and the now and this, and saying like if I'm sitting next to my wife, like be present with her.
Yeah.
I'm here with her. Like she is the priority at this moment. And I have found that I'm more creative and I'm like a better thinker when I give myself the space, not at the computer or not sitting, to just
Yep.
like ruminate and just kind of be alone with my thoughts or like doing other things.
Yep. Yeah, I 100% agree with that. Like I've very recently, after going through Q4, I looked awful. So
I didn't notice. I don't know what you're talking about.
No, I mean, no, it was not a good look in Q4. It was, because you're balancing the 9 to 5, you're balancing your relationship, you're balancing, did a lot of FBM. So really took a look in the mirror and said, we need to like spend hour and a half a day at the gym, focusing on that to create that headspace so we could be more creative and then work on higher leverage ideas rather than just, nose down all day. So that it's been a big shift, and you do feel some of that FOMO, like you said. I think that's a really good point, something that people struggle with. But
No, I still do. Like I'm like, hey, I could have probably bought a bunch of A2As, but I missed out.
Yeah.
I bet you there's things we could buy right now. We're having this conversation. Guarantee you there are things that we're missing out that are going out of stock as we're talking.
100%.
But the reality is like there will be better things tomorrow. So it is what it is. Like we'll be fine.
Yeah, 100%. I mean, that kind of leads into, I think, something that there's kind of some mystery in the community. People are afraid of it, and you're really good at it, which would be Amazon to Amazon flips. Do you want to talk a little bit about how you found that and how you navigate that currently? Maybe touching a little bit on, the terms of service in there, trying to explain how to navigate it.
Yeah, of course. So just as like we'll go kind of as a nutshell what A2A is, right? A2A is in essence buying from Amazon and just selling right back on Amazon. It sounds ridiculous when you like break it down like that, but there are so many reasons and opportunities why Amazon might drop price on something, and you might have an arbitrage opportunity just within the platform itself. A2A is within TOS if you follow literally one rule, which is no prime shipping. Like, do not leverage any prime benefits to make any money. Technically, also against the rule to leverage prime benefits for eBay and for other marketplaces. Like, you cannot technically leverage prime for any reselling purposes, but Amazon's like, are they going to catch you selling on eBay? Probably not. Like, it's really hard, but they will certainly potentially catch you if you do A2A because, and what it comes down to is invoices, right? So it's unlikely they'll like connect the dots between, oh, you bought this thing here and sold it on Amazon on their own. But all it takes is like you doing an A2A with prime shipping and then having one authentic complaint, one used like sold as new, like all these issues that you have to provide an invoice for. And either you don't provide an invoice because you're like, oh crap, I don't want them to know, and then you get dinged, or you provide an invoice and on the invoice it clearly says, yeah, premium shipping, prime shipping, whatever it is, and you're like, ah, crap, I got caught that way too. So it's just like not worth your selling account. There are definitely tons of people that do it. It's like very obvious. You can see on listings who's doing it and who isn't. And there are people in my DMs who like argue with me about it. And be like, I've been doing it for 2 years and like it's been fine. I'm like, listen, this goes back to what I said earlier. Like, you're allowed to do it if you want to. I'm just explaining the risk to you. Like, we say it in the buy box too. I'm like, listen, if you get banned or suspended for doing something that I told you was against the rules, I will feel bad, but I can't help you. I've told you the potential here, and like if you clearly break the rules, it's like very difficult to come back from that. So yeah, as long as you're not using Prime, you're fine. Everything else should be the same. Your buying account. So we recommend 2 different buying accounts: one personal and one business.
Okay.
And the reason is, business you can do tax free, which is really great. So all your A2A flips, regardless of what state you live in, can be tax free.
Yep.
But lately, last year or so, Amazon has been reducing the amount of products business accounts can purchase. So there are some ASINs that as a business account you actually can't even purchase at all. And there are some quantity differences, which is interesting. Like the same product between personal and business, sometimes you can buy more in one account versus the other. And so it's just nice to have both, as long as you don't buy the same thing on both. You cannot use both to get around quantity limits, right? So sometimes Amazon will limit you and be like, you can only buy 3. Just buy 3. Don't make 10 accounts to buy 30. But your account should match you. It should be your name, your address. Like it's essentially the same stuff that you would do at a retailer. Like you want to create a paper trail that you can then link that purchase back to you in case Amazon asks. I discovered it. I mean, I didn't discover it, but like I found it through my own way early on, like probably in that 2019, 2018 range through Keepa. And I actually like tweeted recently, like what's the exact strategy that I used to do every day and Keepa to find these deals. And I loved it because it's kind of addicting, right? Like I think we all like reselling. We like the treasure hunt, especially if you've ever thrifted. You're like, what am I going to find today? Even going into a retailer. But what's annoying about the treasure hunt is that you either have to like drive around store to store or you have to like manually search through all these deals. And I was like, wouldn't it be amazing if like one site just had like every possible price error and it just like randomly generated? Like I used to play a ton of RuneScape as a kid, and like these like online games, and we all love merching. We all love the idea of like sitting in the auction house and like trying to snipe the lowest thing. And that's kind of what A2A is, right? Like you don't have to go anywhere. You sit on one site, you can refresh one screen, and you can just wait for things to drop in price and buy them. So a little bit like a video game. The scale comes into problem, and we can talk about that. But yeah, in essence, you're waiting for either a couple things to happen. You're waiting for a product that's normally out of stock. So these are hype products. We kind of all aware, all sell them. It can be as simple as a PS5, right, when that happened. But a product that Amazon just can't keep in stock. And because they can't keep it in stock at retail, resale price is like 2 or 3x. And it's just been like very flat. So let's say we take a $10 product, normally sells for 30. We're just waiting for Amazon to like get more stock of that. So when they put back in stock at $10, we're going to buy them out. Number 2 is Amazon will occasionally have too much of something in one particular place. So we actually interviewed a manager at Amazon, a fulfillment center manager, and he like confirmed this, whereas like, you know, sometimes if there is too much stock at one fulfillment center, instead of transferring it to other centers, they'll just drop the price just to ship it out of that center. And so occasionally you'll see that where it's like something's $100 and now it's 20, and you're like, that's crazy, but I've got to buy it. And you know, we're banking on the fact that it's going to go back up to retail, and there's like a lot of strategy behind that. And then the third one is price matching, which is huge. Amazon probably is the best software in the world for finding other retailers' prices. I wish we all had access to it. So they are actively scouring the web all the time and being like, what is Walmart selling this product for? What is Target selling this product for? What are like really random niche sites selling this for? And if they find someone selling it cheaper that's reputable, they will match that because they want all of the sales, right? Like they want all the money.
Right.
And so we can do 2 things. We can buy it from Amazon when it drops in price because it's great. Like that's an arbitrage. And then we should always Google the product's name because we can find the site they're matching. And that is like 30% of my business is literally like Googling A2A flips, finding the sale, and then just sourcing the sale. And it saves me so much time because it's like I don't have to, it's not manual sourcing in the sense of like, oh, let me go check this random site out. I didn't get a promo email. I am already guaranteed to find at least one thing because I know they're having it.
Right.
And I just look for adjacent products. And it opens me up to new stores because like I've never heard of some of these websites. They're price matching. But if Amazon's treating them as a competition, like I
trust them.
Try to look at them as like, yeah, I trust is a little bit higher as a base, and then you do your own research. But like,
sure.
you're a little more confident in them. And then of course, like the last one is, you know, other sellers sometimes do make mistakes. We try. This one is not as great because like I feel bad, right? Like I don't want to like take a heavy advantage of other sellers, like the repricer going haywire. You know, shout out people. But like, I like. Sometimes, you know, if something is dropping in price and other people match it, you're like, listen, I'm just going to buy out the competition and I'll resell it at my higher price because I know I can. And if you funnel through those, it's kind of like, yeah, you're just waiting and you click buy. There's other ones, we'll talk about it, but I also want to pause. Like, I don't know if you guys do A2A. I don't know if you have questions on those particular ones, but.
Yeah. So I've done A2A. I was not aware of the Prime line. You know, you can't use Prime. Was not aware of that. So I was guilty of doing that at one point. Caught me. But I'm curious, uh, are you then, what does that infrastructure look like on the back end? Are you leveraging, the keep alerts? Do you have
Mm.
like a SKU list? Like, what does that look like tactically?
So yeah, that's kind of like the next step, right? So we talked about like the products that restock at retail that you can then buy and flip at above retail. Um, the next step to that is like, okay, great, you bought something. How do we know when we can buy it again? Like when Amazon restocks. So Keepa Alerts is by far like the best free, quote unquote free, because you're already paying for Keepa anyway,
Right.
version of that. Like I highly recommend anyone do that. I think there's a 5,000 product limit. It's either a 2,000 or 5,000 product limit where you can't like track more than a certain number. And we used Keepa Alerts for a long time, but it Keepa Alerts are a little finicky because they only alert you like once or twice a day. They're a bit delayed, so I don't know. We kind of a whole podcast on how Keepa actually works, but like, Keepa doesn't work, I think, the way a lot of people think it does, and they don't catch a lot of things.
Yep.
When you look at a Keepa chart, you're only seeing like 65, maybe
100%.
70% of what's like
Yep.
actually happening on that listing. And for that reason, they don't always catch restocks. And so we actually built our own tool that just catches restocks of those. And it checks the listing, scrapes the listing every 20 seconds. And so we were like actively beating Cuba by 8 to 10 minutes. And so that is something that, going back to like the buy box, like that's like one of the tools that we invested in, right? And to build that out. And so that's what I still use for my business. That's what the members get access to. And there's no limit. Like we allow people to do unlimited products that they want to add to that.
Mhm.
And so I spend like an hour every like couple days. And part of my tactic is I want to go through and find all of the ones I missed. Like we're on this call right now. 5 things dropped in the last hour that I would have bought. I want to go find them retroactively and add them to my tracker. And so my tracker is thousands of products deep now, and it just DMs me on Discord when something restocks.
That's awesome.
And so I'm just building in like this funnel of like, some days I don't actively source, I just buy things that when they ping.
That certainly is a model. I was definitely I've been in the flip groups that maybe don't have the same level of tool. Yours seems like it's really sophisticated.
There's
how do you
monitors.
manage are you getting pings like every few minutes? So what does that look like for you?
Yeah, so I mean, there's tons of monitor systems out there. What we try to do is they're all unique to the user. So like if you guys join and got access, like you would add things, it would only be you. No
Okay.
one else can see them.
That's good.
And I think that was really important because we didn't want like 500 other people to buy the lead that you found.
Right.
And so let's say I have 3,000 products. Those are just alerting me. You have 10,000 products, are just alerting you. And so some days it's super heavy and some days it's pretty light, but that's like why you do it routinely and add new products to it so that you can just kind of get constantly alerted. That being said, we're not here to sell that exists, but Keepa Alerts, for anyone listening, does it. Like it's a little slower, but it doesn't mean that you can't make a lot of money doing it. And so I do think that if you're going through Keepa deals or you're going through the process of finding these A2A flips, definitely add them to Keepa Alerts. You'll still get notified. You very likely can still purchase those. And it's just like a nice way. It's not passive, obviously, you have to do work, but it's a nice like reactive way to make a couple $1,000 a month by putting in like the work up front. Because you do all the assessment at the time of adding. You're like, all right, I'm gonna buy this, and then when it pings, you don't have to think. You just click buy.
Yep.
That's
I think that like the first year of OA is just like running from spot to spot, and then you learn, why am I doing this? How can I work a little bit smarter rather than running from spot to spot? Still leveraging the connections you have within the community if an opportunity comes up. But I think that's a nice layer of sophistication that you put in there.
I had a question about just buying 8A, so I'm actually curious. What is the largest quantity that you've ever bought of one SKU, like right off just one purchase? Boom. Is it upwards of?
It's in the hundreds. So Amazon maxes you out usually at $9.99. Like you can't generally buy overnight. Some business accounts are just like it can go, but like $9.99 is usually the max. Amazon will more than often than not put some quantity limits. But what we found is if you catch a restock within like a minute, they don't actually set it yet. Like there's like this gap sometimes between the restock and the quantity limits. And so you can buy 100 or something, and then a minute later, the most anyone else can buy is 3. And that's great because like you just kind of own that listing moving forward. We've gone fairly deep. I would say it's probably 500, 600 of any one SKU in one order. Over time, though, I've purchased the same SKU thousands of times. There's a couple products that I will just always buy when they restock because I know that they're always gonna like sell out. And I think that's also like when we talk about scale, like to me, and when I try to express to others, like most of the time, scaling from 25,000 to 50,000 to 100,000 isn't necessarily doing more work. It's just buying more product that you're already finding. It's like
Yeah.
you bought 50 of them last time. Okay, great. Buy 300 next time.
Right.
And like you're doing the same amount of effort. So that's been an evolution for me as an A2A. But like I would buy 5 and be super nervous. And now I'm buying 50. Or maybe I'm buying 100. And it's the same amount of effort on my end.
Yeah.
Just more money.
So one other question that I had was, you mentioned that sometimes you'll buy from third-party sellers. Do you feel like there's any additional risk in doing so? I know that I have been guilty of being A2A at one point. I think, Max, you remember that time. But the repricer wasn't working as I expected it to. But
Yeah.
how does that look?
There's definitely more. There's more overall risk, but there's no like, hey, you're suddenly breaking TOS risk. I think, you know, if you're going to buy from a third party seller, there's always rumor and chatter of like, oh, Amazon won't accept those invoices then, or like, oh, section 3, and that kind of thing. We've successfully submitted third party seller invoices and been fine. I will say, obviously, do your homework on the seller. There's a ton of shady sellers out there, unfortunately, and either you don't get anything because you don't want to like have to deal with that mess, or you get a fake product, or you get a used product, or you're just like so you know, I do tend to try to gravitate towards the, you know, like the 6 PMs of the world. Like they're Amazon owned, but they're a third party seller technically. And like the bigger third party sellers or the FBA sellers that have a clear track record of being legit. Always, you know, if you use a prep center and you don't touch your product, like, so I use a prep center, I don't see any of my A2A product at all. If I do a third party buy though, I always put in the notes and I always ask them to like diligently, like extra check that product to make sure it's real and new, because, you know, there can be problems there, but everything checks out, then it's on its way and it goes back in.
Okay.
You said 30% of your business was A2A, something like that.
No, so 30% is tracking down A2A sales from the price caps. I would say like 60% of business is A2A.
Oh, so you're really entrenched in this A2A.
I'm heavy A2A. I mean, and it's not just me. Like we've kind of built a little culture, in the buy box around A2A just because that's what I do so much of, and it's not the only thing we do, of course. But there's clearly like a passion there for it, and I am by far not the biggest. Like there are people spending like 80 to 100 grand a month on A2A.
Wow. Yeah. Now that we're talking about it, I actually have like 3 SKUs in my head that I've sold hundreds of units of, that Amazon price matches to the sales all the time and actually sells for well below retail. And I'm selling it at retail all the time. So when I go I might spend a few grand on those. That's actually crazy because I don't know why I haven't thought about that. It's like one of my top SKUs. Yeah, that's awesome. So yeah, this is what's great. It's like you learn something new talking to people, and this is what's so important about community as well. Just a little tangent on the side note on that, but you know, I think new sellers, they're so afraid to reach out to people, and I guess kind of going back, but you know, we'll circle back here real quick. When you first started on social media and stuff, how did that what inspired you to kind of get into the online community versus kind of doing what you were doing before?
You're gonna get me in my soapbox. I mean, honestly, I'm a pretty introverted guy. Like I don't go out to like big meetups. I don't generally go to the conventions, although I think, you know, I'd like to go to some more. Mainly what sparked it is because I was a bit of a lurker, right? Like I had a Twitter. I've had a Twitter for a long time. I followed the people. I got kind of like saw what's going on, and I, you know, you sit on the sidelines long enough, and you can't, you're not allowed in my mind to complain about something if you're not doing anything about it. Like if I number one, so like or judge, like we all as humans judge, and it's like it's a bad, you know, it's annoying that we do it, but like it's just kind of in our nature, and we try really hard to fight it, and some of us are better at that than others. But like if I'm watching a YouTube video, for example, and I'm like, oh man, that's a weird place to put his camera, or like, oh, this guy's stuttering, and like, oh, that's like, it feels unprofessional. I've never made a YouTube video. So like, what the heck am I doing judging this guy like putting himself out there? I've never done that. And I
Right.
think the same thing was about Twitter. It's like I'm seeing people post. I'm like, this is kind of misinformation, or
Right.
like you're selling someone a dream that's not really how it's going to work out, or whatever. And I was like, I can't sit here and make these thoughts or have these thoughts if I'm not then part of the game. And if I, ultimately I want to be just a voice in that seat, but I want to be a voice maybe for the other side, maybe a little more realistic, maybe a little bit more like, here's a fundamental, like how to. Also, by the way, like not everyone's going to do $1 million, and that's okay. It's okay to just make $300 a month and like pay your car. Like that's like perfectly acceptable to
Yeah.
do on Amazon, and you're a success if you do that. Like if you can be a profitable at the end of the year on Amazon, you are in the minority.
100%.
And so I like that's really what it came down to. It's like I can't think these thoughts and then not be a part of it because that's not fair to me. It's not fair to them. I who am I to judge if I've never tried?
Yeah.
And so I just wanted to go out there and say my piece. Chris Grant, bless him, he was a big part of that.
Right.
Like he pushed me to be more vocal, and it's kind of surpassed honestly my thoughts of what it would be. Like I really enjoy it. Um, I have dreams now that are focused mainly like on social media I didn't have before because like
Yeah.
I want that to continue to grow. I enjoy the community. I get to talk to like I don't think we would not be here, right?
Never.
If I wasn't on Twitter. So um there are some amazing people that don't tweet. I wish they did because like I just think there needs to be more voices that are
Yeah.
being a little more realistic and like kind of in the trenches. And um this is where my rant goes in. It's like we talked about the young kids before, and we say young kids, but like the teenagers or like the early 20s, and I think they are wonderful and they are the future. Like every time that happens, like, they are the future of this community, and that's amazing. What frustrates me though is when a 20-year-old person tells a 40-year-old person that they should quit their job and chat scale because
Yes.
like
Because you have no idea what's going on.
like you are not 40, my man, and like there is a level of responsibility that person has that you cannot dream of yet. Like they have
Right.
kids, they have a wife, they have a house. Like there is just like a disconnect between what you're saying. And I've seen conversations where someone's like, no, like I can't leave my job, and they're like, oh, you don't want it bad enough then, right? Like, and I'm like, this can't happen, and if it does happen, like I need to like be there to like try to help
Yeah.
because I don't want that 40-year-old to be discouraged of trying because they're like, well, if I'm not going to do $1 million, then I should just quit because this kid told me that.
Go home
And
and
so
cry in the shower.
that's yeah, like that's the philosophy I try to bring to the platform every day. It's like gotta have little wins, man. You just gotta be excited and happy for like any stage that you want to go to. So it's a long answer, but like that's
Yeah.
that's kind of why. And I plan to do like YouTube is kind of on my list in 2024 as well.
Yeah. Well, I think having those even-handed conversations and like, you know, when you have the young buck that's like, really doing well and selling a lot, like they've got one thing on their mind 24/7. Whereas as you go 20 years down the line, you're going to collect responsibilities. I promise you that.
Mhm.
So they do add up. One thing that it kind of inspired me as you were talking about, thinking about what other people are saying. One thing I really like is that occasionally there will be a really like productive comment in a thread or say, hey, you missed this. This is like this other piece of information you should be
Mhm.
aware of. That's what I love about like Twitter. So if something's like directionally accurate and then somebody adds a little bit,
Mhm.
I think that's the secret sauce of the community. I saw a couple, I think you were on that thread today where he's like, hey, go use this PDF website. That's really a great website. Like I really like I had no idea that existed. So
Oh yeah,
that's really cool.
yeah. We're a big fan of Small PDF. Shout out to them if you haven't tried them.
Yeah, I mean, I've been struggling, trying to use the free versions of Acrobat, like doesn't work.
No, yeah, it's all the rage.
Yeah, I think community is huge, and what's so cool about Twitter is, for the most part, it's pretty positive, but not always. So I guess you don't always have control of what people's gonna say, but that's beautiful thing as well. But I guess what you do have control over is your own community, which you've kind of been building yourself. So I guess I kind of wanted to go into that if you're cool with that. Talk a little bit about BuyBox.io and just kind of, like how has that experience been building your own community and kind of like being able to, mold and create the type of atmosphere that you would like to see most.
Oh man, molding and creating. Put me on a pedestal. No, I mean it's as they give me just as much as I give them. Um, it's 4 years now. I don't think I'd be like I know for a fact I wouldn't be the seller I am without them. And what's really cool, like we have 9 staff members in there, and 8 out of 9 started with us as brand new sellers. And so it's to see someone go from what is Amazon to hitting whatever revenue goal they have for themselves. 2 of them went full time when the time was right for them. Um, it I almost get more pleasure and like more satisfaction out of like them being successful than my own business. Like my business is fine, that's great. Like I want to like
Yeah,
crush things, but like seeing someone else like do the thing they set out to do and you being a part of that journey for them is
Absolutely.
like a high that you like never get tired of.
yep,
And so yeah, like being able to do that day in and day out. Like I was, when you first start anything, you worry that it's gonna feel like a job at some point. Like you never want to start something that feels fun and then like eventually be like, ugh, this is grueling. Um, even answering the same support ticket a million times now over 4 years, like it doesn't really get to me. Like I just still, as long as the other person on the end of that is like genuinely looking for help, it's worth it. We're fortunate to do like about 15 to 20 hours of one-on-ones a week, right? So we include one-on-ones entirely free with membership, and that's not a plug. That's just like to give you an idea. And
yeah,
so like we do Zoom calls, and they like anywhere from like 30 to 60 minutes of just like talking about whatever. Um, and a lot of the people in our community, because it makes sense, are older. Like a lot of them are
yep.
like parents, or like we even have some grandparents in there, and that's amazing.
That's
Like I
cool.
love that to like hear their journey of like why they did Amazon and then like get into the nitty gritty of like how to help them do whatever it is they want to do. And transparently, like when you're doing one-on-ones or you're doing that, you can also feel more comfortable giving away. We call it sauce or whatever. Like
Yeah.
you're more comfortable sharing like more of the details or secrets about your business. Yeah, because you just like want to see them be so
Yep.
successful. Um, so it's a good question. I think it's changed over the years, and I don't know what it's gonna be, but I would like support and that to be a part of. As long as I'm a seller, I'd like to be doing that. I don't think I could do that if I wasn't a seller because Amazon changes so much, and like I
Yeah.
wouldn't be as of help to them if I
Right.
didn't know what was actively going on. Um, and yeah, we welcome everyone and anyone of any age, but we don't market like I'm not marketing aggressively to the 18-year-old. Like I think we have a lot of the younger people in there, but it's just like we're really like ideally it's like a place where if you want to make $500 a month and that's gonna like change your life because it will,
Yeah.
like we want to help you on that journey. And I want to build some cool tools in the process. Like, I just want to build software, man. Like I love building tech,
Okay.
and it
Nice.
allows us to do that.
Awesome. Yeah, I mean, I think that like if you go in with the goal of it just doing the car payment, you're not going to be
Yeah.
disappointed because then you're going to be going about things very pragmatically. You're going to understand your numbers. You can understand them on a small scale. And then if you want to grow it more, you can also do that. I mean, I think that's a good way to start is just to
$10
offload.
a day is life-changing money. It doesn't sound like it, but
Yeah,
like people, I even get people that are like, I went to Marshall's, I found 4 things, but they're like, it's like $7 profit each. Like, this isn't worth my time. Like,
it'll
dude, do
compound.
that once a day. It's a
Yeah,
thousand dollars.
which is
I mean,
crazy.
like, I don't understand.
Yeah.
Like, I mean, I today, right now, sitting here, I would like $1,000 more a month. Like,
Yep.
I don't know who doesn't want that.
Yep.
So,
Yeah.
like those little things, they add up so fast, and I think it's just you gotta open people's eyes to that.
Yep.
Even $5, 3 times a day, is almost $500 a month, and like that's about it's like what I get up my food bill for the month, or my it more than covers my car. So it's crazy what people will not do just because it feels small.
Yep. 100%. I think that's why we still do Turo. Is like it's like 40 to 80 bucks a day, and it's not a ton of work. It's responding to some messages, and that's it. We still do it. It still brings in money. Right now, it's not very fun with the weather, but you know, we're still doing it. Everything is going to add up over time.
Totally.
Cool.
I,
Do you
I
want
I mean, I mean, I know we're like we're in this now. We're an hour in here, and I
to?
don't want to keep you all too late. But like, I do have some questions for you, very similar to the ones you asked me, if that's okay.
Yeah.
Because you talked about building community, and you talked about you know, my role on social media, and obviously like I met you guys because of social media. And so like I would kind of almost want to knock that question back to you. Like I don't get the opportunity a whole lot to ask people why they're on Twitter. Like that's really not something that I should more, but it's not really something that comes across my mind. Um, I mean, what is your, and this is for both of you, like what is it that you want to do on your platform? Because you're both platform, you're both community leaders. Like what do you like, what responsibility do you feel with that? Like what do you want to achieve with that? What do you hope people take away when they come across your page?
Yeah. So I think I'm not going to speak for Max, but they're probably pretty aligned just because we've meshed for so long.
Yeah.
Similar goals.
Yeah, I think that uh, it started. I think it started selfishly in that it was looking for people to grow with, and then it kind of evolved over the last like whatever 7 months. And as I kind of found my voice and where I fit into the community, um, really trying to approach it with like a positive mindset and like keep the discourse relatively civil.
Mhm.
And um, really, I just enjoy the fact that everybody's trying to do something. I don't care what it is. It could be drop shipping, it could be whatever it is. People are actively trying to improve. So I really like that part of the community and being a part of that, and then trying to um, lift the folks that are just starting and letting them know that it's okay that they're just starting, because everybody on Twitter starts with 0 followers and it feels lonely when you join and you're looking to do something. Um, so I enjoy like, hey, you know what? Like, here's this community. Um, just dive in, just be yourself. If you approach everybody with like some level of kindness and respect, it's going to work out. Like, you will find the people that
Mhm.
you're meant to, enjoy and potentially grow businesses with, share ideas with. So that's kind of how I approach it. And um, I also see all of the value that the folks that were on Twitter before I was gave me, and if I can then share that perspective back on just simple things that make my life easier, then it's a win-win for everybody. What
Mhm.
about you, Max?
Yeah, pretty much similar. I'll actually give people some sauce, if you will, right now. I think when you first start, it's like pretty daunting, and you're like, man, I don't know what to tweet right now. Especially if you're a new seller, you can scroll back on my Twitter. I had some crazy videos where I was just going on rants. I'm pretty transparent. I don't know. I never really cared to be super. Oh, I can't really show this. I don't want like I'm very open and honest about stuff, and I think you know I've been less active on Twitter. That's gonna change shortly here, but when I first started, I literally just documented everything.
Yeah.
I think other people kind of related to that, and it's just I think when you start tweeting, you're not really sure what to tweet, and it almost feels like you're just tweeting out into nothingness, and no one really
Mhm.
cares. They're just like I don't even know. And then as you start to build momentum and build gravity, you start to define what sort of things that you like tweeting and when just how to connect with people, and you kind of just find your footing on the path that you want to go to and see where you want to go. But you kind of just have to start, and just document everything in the beginning. I think everyone should be doing it. I don't have anyone that I know before Twitter that does Amazon, so for me it was also like survival. Like I was so obsessed with this thing and I really wanted to make it work, but I knew that I needed a community. I did not want to do it by myself.
Yeah.
Sourcing 10 hours a day can be very demoralizing when you're first starting. And I think if you have a community of people around you going through that same struggle and they're learning with you, it makes everything more enjoyable. And yeah, I'm just really big on the overall aspect of community in a general sense, not just Amazon. And I think whatever you're passionate about, whether it's Pokemon cards or flipping shoes or I don't know whatever, diamonds, whatever. I don't care what you're into. Want to play whatever games in the park, just find a community. And what is so cool the internet is there's a community for everything, and I'm sure you can definitely find something like that. And yeah, just kind of insert yourself slowly and kind of watch what other people are doing and see how everything goes and kind of be respectful and just kind of be who you want to be. And I think that's the great thing about Twitter is you can kind of just do that. And so that's kind of what I did. Kind of spiraled out from there a little bit more, and now it's more Amazon focused. But I kind of started out completely random and all sorts of stuff, and then I kind of trimmed it down a little bit.
I mean, I remember the car rants.
We was watching.
Dude, I had to hype myself up so much in the beginning. I'll talk about this. I'll be open about this. I think a lot of people won't be open about this, but I will. Dude, when you first start on Amazon, it is if you want to take it from 0 to 100 very quickly, just be aware that the stress that you are going to put yourself through is immense. It is much more stressful going from 0 to 100 really quick. It's like whiplash, same thing, versus a slow drive. I kind of recommend people probably do the slower approach. You know, I think it's more sustainable and stuff like that. But, you know, if you have to get somewhere, you got to go somewhere. It's fine. It is what it is. There's multiple ways you can attack this thing. But yeah, it was, I had to hype myself up every single morning. So part 100%. Of those car rants in the beginning were just,
it was totally like an accountability tool.
Yeah.
It was like, if I post on Twitter every day, it's a W for the day. Because I don't like talking on camera. I am uncomfortable doing it. So if I'm actively doing that every day, it's a win. And I'll probably, at the very beginning, I'll probably go source something that doesn't sell very well. In reality, like that's probably what I'll do. But I'll be happy with it. So that's the origin story.
That's awesome. No, I think they're both coming from a really good place. And I don't know if there's like there's probably some wrong places. But I think it's loneliness. Right, and it's wanting to talk about the real things as they're happening. And I see I see a lot of that, and I respect it immensely. And it's cool. It's really nice that I don't think growth is a reward per se, but I think it's really nice that the community has responded so kindly to you guys putting yourselves out there in that way. And there's hesitation in that smile. But
I'm just thinking back at some of the crazy rants.
Those stressful days when you didn't really know how to navigate everything.
Yeah, I'm also. I mean, I'm a very comedic person, so
a lot of it's tongue in cheek.
I'm very sarcastic person. Some people can't even tell when I'm so sarcastic. Some people actually think I'm serious when I'm being sarcastic because they just can't tell because I'm so
that deadpan, huh?
Yeah. So, but yeah, no, it's interesting. So,
I think it's just helpful to hear, you know, from any seller. It's funny. I also think you can grab, not to speak down to any of us, but I think you can grab like any 3 sellers and they'll have a unique story that's worth listening to, right? Like I think that's just really cool. I wish more people would share. Like number one, I wish more people would share like their origin, like why they did it. I also wish more people would share what they want to achieve, because it makes it real and like helps people like kind of hold you accountable to that. But it's there's the musings of social media. Sometimes we only show like the best part of the day.
Oh, that's constant.
That can be really tough. I mean, I'm looking kind of, we had some show notes on the side for anyone listening to this, if we're not cutting, which is fine. One thing I didn't touch on, which I do want to talk about a little bit, is like the local optima thing I wrote, and I don't know if you like said I wrote it in the notes. So like local optima is it's a theory in calculus, right, which like allows you to use some really cool math to find like the highest point in any like particular region, right? So it's like a big square. You're like, what is the highest point in the square? And it's fun stuff if you like calculus, but like to take it to like a real world, it's a very real thing that a lot of people do. And we talked about like very aggressively going from 0 to 100, and that's what made me think of it. It's like, imagine like you're in the Sahara Desert and you look around, it's just like flat everywhere, and then the mountain, like in the far away, you see this mountain. And like, so to you, where you're standing, that mountain is like Valhalla, right? Like that is like the top of the earth. And so you spend a ton of time and energy, you get to the top of the mountain. And on the other side of the mountain, there's a taller mountain. And so we get so hyper focused on the first mountain as like our peak, our goal, like that is it, like we've made it, that there's always something bigger. And I think it's like a good reminder, at least to me, and maybe for anyone listening, we have these. Number one, it's okay to set your sights really, really high. Like it's shoot for as high as you want to be. Have intermittent goals, like have things in between there and now. but understand like whatever you think is like that peak, whatever is like in your sandbox, you are in a vacuum. You know, there is always going to be something there that's on the other side. And I don't know, it's in business, in all the businesses I do, it's so easy to get hyper focused on one thing and like die on that hill
Yep.
that you miss the second mountain entirely. And the second mountain is actually potentially like easier to climb, or like the more profitable mountain, or whatever it is. And so, you know, I kind of like my second point there was like relying too heavily on loops, and that's like kind of a separate matter. But I do think it's important. Like sometimes I see people spend 10 hours to get like one order in on this one site because, oh my God, the ROI is amazing.
Yeah.
Like I have to buy this thing because it's like crazy, and I found a loop, and it's like, oh, and you spend so much effort and energy doing that. And that is your mountain, man. Like that is like, you,
Right.
you are so focused. And if you spend that same energy doing like maybe a more boring other thing, you arguably could have actually come out ahead on like the other side.
Yeah.
And so I do worry, and I want people to like not get too focused that there's only one way to be successful, not get too focused there's only one thing to do at a time, because there is like so many other ways to navigate, and there's so many other things to tackle, and what feels really big is not necessarily big. You know, there are other ways to be successful outside of this one tactic that you heard about or learned or whatever it is. So
Yeah.
there's a long-winded way of saying that, but
Well, it's funny you say that, because I think that's not the first time we've heard that since like the end of December. We've heard that quite a bit. You know, just within our you know, core like mastermind group, I've heard that probably 5 times coming from 5 different directions of, okay, we did a cool thing. Now there's more opportunity. What's the second, you know, what's the second and then the third, you know, crank of this thing? So I think that just keep that in mind if you're listening, is that you are probably dialed in on this one thing, get good at it, but don't kind of miss everything else that's out there as you go.
Yeah, I think it gets tough when you have the horse blinders on and you're just so focused. You tend to kind of, you know, it's like after Q4, for instance, for me, for sure, I kind of like slowed down a little bit and took the time to look around, and I was just like, whoa. I zoomed out for a second. I just saw so much stuff going on that I had been neglecting because I was so focused on just one thing, which is great. And I think some people definitely could also use that focus, because I think some people never get to that like super honed in flow state for elongated periods of time. And I think that's super valuable too. You know, focusing on one goal at a time and being hyper focused. Like it's really just about balance, I think, when it comes to that. Like,
Yeah.
it's great, but if you start to do that and you don't ever leave that one point, you're going to neglect a lot of opportunity outside of that. So I think it's good to have like periodical step backs. Periodical, is that a word?
Sure.
Periodic step backs, and kind of look at the big picture along the way, and then learn to go
Yep.
back in and back out, which is honestly a skill set in its own. I have a hard time balancing that. I'm pretty like, pew! And sometimes it's tough.
you lose the forest and the trees, right? That's
Yeah.
what they say.
Yeah, it's
Yeah.
crazy.
See, that's what Steven does really well, is he'll sprint for 3 months and then he'll take
I watched
2
that interview, and I was like, this guy does what?
Yeah.
I was like, he flies to what spends like whatever.
Oh.
I do love that. I actually told someone about that after I watched the interview. I was like, oh, like this. So I think that I think there's other things to unpack in there,
Yeah.
but I think though, like the idea, like we were talking about like feeling guilty, right? Like we were talking about earlier about like how do you turn it off? Like Steven has figured that out, right? Like
Yeah.
he can go spend a bunch of money and then turn it off for 3 weeks. And
Yeah.
I think like that is a remarkable skill that I
Yeah.
wish more people had.
Oh yeah. And so he'll come back, like he'll get really hyper focused for a short period of time, you know, 3 months. And then like right now he's just in Florida, and he's like, the calls I get are totally random. He's just spitballing and thinking of all of these new opportunities.
Mhm.
And so it's really cool to watch him, you know, just go at it. Yeah, he's one of the funniest kids I think I've met. I love watching him work, but it's you know, he's unique.
I think everyone kind of finds their own little lane within Amazon and how they like to do their certain systems. And oh, I like to kind of do it this way, and I kind of like to do it that, and oh, I kind of prefer doing this. And I think, you know, you have to definitely play to your strengths, see what you're good at, see what you like doing, kind of just double down on that, and maybe hire out I guess when you're first starting to hire, definitely hire out your weaknesses, but and things that you don't like doing, I guess, and then kind of go from there. But definitely do not neglect. If you're really good at one thing, don't look at it as an imbalance. But you should probably be well rounded in all areas and at least have an understanding of all areas. But double down on when you're good at, and find someone else who's good at that, and figure out a way to pay them to do the things that you aren't good at. So
Yeah, 100%.
I agree. That's the
Um,
value of networking too.
yeah, no, it exposes what you're not the best at because someone's going to be better at it, and then you're like,
And you
oh,
get
I
the
really
help that you
suck at
need in that avenue. Like, Max, like you're gonna go crush some A2A after this. And I bet you that like if you wanted and you reached out, we talked for like 30, 60 minutes. I bet you we could get you to crush even more. Like that might be a blind spot for you right now. I don't think it will be forever. I think you're going to get very good at it if you want to, but you can lean on my years of doing it and shortcut your way to that if you wanted. So like I think that's the beauty of like knowing people.
Yeah.
Oh, don't say that, man. I like to chat, so don't give me the open invitation.
It's always open, man. I think that's the thing too. It's like, as you grow on Twitter, it's like for some reason people feel like less comfortable reaching out to you.
True.
But I've had people in my DM. I mean, I'm about to get sworn potentially, but like I've had people in my DMs ask me for an A2A question. All I care about is that you have shown some like you've done something
Little effort.
to like ask a question beyond like how
Yeah.
and more about like hey, can you explain this one strategy to me? Or like I tried doing this and I failed, or I didn't understand it. Like, what would you have done here? Like those are like much more interesting to answer. So I had one guy reach out to me, like pretty like decent following, like never talked to him. He is wonderful. Like I enjoy his presence now, and we spoke for 3 hours. Like he DM'd me on Twitter, jumped on Zoom 3 hours later, and now he's in my like Discord DMs and like we chat. And so it's because like he clearly like put effort into like trying it first, and then we talked, and pretty open to doing those things. It's just
I'm the same way.
Yourself out there.
I'm the same way. Like if you just show minimal effort, like just you gotta Google it once. Like not a huge fan of like how do I get ungated? There's tons of YouTube videos there. If there's a nuanced question about it because you've tried, that's a little different. The effort is respectable.
Yeah.
I have the perfect analogy for this. If you see someone on the side of the road and their car is broken down and they're just sitting in their car on their phone with the hood up and whatever, like no one's going to help you. If you see a guy in a snowstorm pushing his car across the side of the road and you can visibly see he's struggling, he's got a t-shirt on, but he's out there putting in work trying to make his situation better. Dude, 10 times out of 10, I'm going to stop and see if I can help him. But no one wants to help the person who's just sitting there on their phone with the hood up on the side of the road, not helping themselves. It's just something in human nature. It's like, I don't really know how to explain it. It's just a natural phenomenon that I'm a genius and I've coined. But yeah, and like, it's like a real two-step thing. It's like, Google it. If it's right there on page 1, perfect. You saved yourself time, A, and then B, if it's not, put a little effort, and then go ask someone and do that, and it makes it a lot better when you just put in a little effort.
So 100%.
Yeah, and that goes like to a community. I think that is the way you do that. Like reach out to someone. It doesn't really matter who. And if they've shown at least ideally someone who's shown some level of like interest in that topic, they talk about it, tweet about it, whatever, and you reach out and you ask them a thoughtful question, good chance they reply. And Max, I'll be like very, very upfront about your book suggestion, right? So like when I ask people for book suggestions, right? Like Max, it came out like because there was a tweet, there was a thread, and then I kind of replied back and forth, and then there was like it kind of moved to the DMs, and I had never talked to Max before, although I've seen Max a bunch of times on Twitter, like never had an engaging conversation, and Max took the time to DM me 3 books. I think it was 3 books that you liked, and you specifically said, hey, like this is my favorite one. So I bought that book and I started reading or listening to it, and I did that. It honestly wouldn't have mattered what book you said, because to me, like I wanted to show you that I cared enough about your attention that you gave me, that I'm gonna go do that thing, and then I'm gonna reply to you and be like, "Hey, this was interesting, this part, or I like this part." Because like the best way to create a relationship is by like taking someone what they said and trying it, and then coming back to them and be like, "Hey, I tried what you said.
Yeah.
Here's what I learned."
Yeah.
And you're more likely than not to like get other. They're gonna keep then feeding you information or like wanting to have a relationship with you. I think you give before you ask. Um, and it doesn't matter. Like you gotta put your ego to the side. Like it doesn't matter who it is. You can learn from anyone. And so that's kind of like that was the perfect kind of experience that like we literally just went through. So I'm on chapter 5. Max, I think the book is interesting for sure.
Yeah.
I think that there's like it's an acquired taste.
I'm a very unique individual, so it's
I like no,
probably
I like the principles of it. As you were like I was showing you, I think it's a little alpha. Like his like specific examples he gives, but I think like the principles of it are good. Like the business plan, like the living documents, and kind of like the emotion and the logic, and like getting into it. I think that's really cool and that's really helpful. But it's probably not a book I would have bought on my own. But that's also the beauty of it is like, when someone gives you a recommendation, sometimes you just got to buy and say, okay, like I trust that human.
Yep.
I'm gonna try it. What do I have to lose? Like $12, right? But I'm going to create a relationship with them. So like, obviously we have this podcast now, but I bet you if we didn't do this podcast, if I had Max sent your DM and I was like, hey, I read this book and here's what I thought, and you would have replied to me, we probably could have gotten a call because you would have wanted to like interact with me because you like, wow, this guy actually like followed through.
Yeah, you show effort into actually wanting to connect with that person on a more than superficial level. And in today's world, that's priceless. So
yeah, it really is. It really is.
But yeah, I actually have done that before too. I was in the grocery store, saw someone picking out a bottle of wine. I said, I'll try that. And it was one of the worst wines I've ever had. So.
All right, Max, what are you doing? What are you ruining our beautiful moment for?
No, I'm just kidding. But no, that's a great take though.
Yeah, it's good to get out of your like comfort zone a little bit and try something that you never would have tried yourself, because you might like it, you might enjoy it, or you might hate it, like Max's bottle of wine. But awesome. I think this has been one of our best episodes. Saul, I really appreciate you coming on. Is there anything that you wanted to leave the folks with? Where can people find you at? Give you the link.
I mean, I think we talked some really great stuff. We kind of went through like, I think we have minimal A2A stuff, which is great. Like happy to talk as little or as little or a lot of that as needed. Hopefully people felt like beyond just like how do I make money, there was content here that they wanted to like sink their teeth into and think about on like a higher level, and maybe how they look at their business and how they like look at other people as people. Again, we're all humans. Like I often will, if you talk to me enough, and hopefully you guys get a chance to do that, and I get a chance to talk to you, you're like, I say the phrase like human to human quite a bit. Like when I'm about to say something that's maybe like a little fragile or maybe isn't like normal, like you don't normally like get into like your feelings as people don't. Like I'm just like human to human. Here's what I think, because at the end of the day, we're all human, and I think it's really like I just want people to recognize that, and treat themselves as a human being that has needs and like physical and emotional, and then like other people too. And yeah, we of course at the end of the day, we like the three of you just want all of you to be successful. Like I think that's been pretty clear. Like we just want you to do what's like the best for you, and we want you to make decisions that are informed, and to have put a little thought behind your actions, and to ask for help when you need it, and to know you're not alone. And if you do those things, like I think you'll be okay. And be kind to yourself. Like sometimes there are things out of your control that happen, and that's okay too.
Yeah.
But you're trying, and like
100%.
there's value in that.
Is it all right if we call you Uncle Saul? It feels like this is a
Uncle. So Pete's dad, right? Is that what I understand?
Yeah, I've been coined the dad of our group chat.
Yeah.
Policeman the youngster.
Yeah, you can call me whatever you like.
Uncle Saul has a
Uncle
ring.
Saul works. I'm an uncle, so I'll take it.
Nice.
But yeah, I mean, if people want to find any of us, I think obviously they're watching all of our Twitter are on the screen. Pete Flips, Saul Stuff, and MAXCAT FBA. But I think it's probably where we all hang out the most. At least it's where I hang out the most.
Yeah.
I haven't cracked into Instagram or YouTube yet. I don't
It's
know if I
another
will.
animal. It's another animal.
I like the words more than pictures.
Yeah.
But
100%.
yeah, you can certainly DM me. I'm sure they can DM these guys
Yep.
as well. If you have questions, not only just like on a general level, of course, like there's, as we talked, like tools and content and stuff that I have out there that you can always ask about too. But by no means does anyone owe me any money. Like you all, like there is so much free content in the world that I want you to absorb and take. That we just put out some paid stuff because like we want to keep building cool stuff and it takes money to do that. And so that's why we have those things. And if you want to check them out, that's great. If you want to ask me questions about it, that's great. But if you don't, it will not hurt my feelings at all. Like by no means.
Yeah.
So, but that's me.
Awesome. Well, Saul, check out at Saul Sell Stuff. Definitely worth the follow. And appreciate everybody that listened. This was probably one of our better episodes. Certainly our longest, which is I'm excited. The conversation was good throughout. So we have hit a new record. And I'm very happy that everybody got to this point, and we will check you out next time.
Yeah, and you wanted to like it and subscribe and leave a comment.
Yeah, they can like and subscribe.
Yeah, we want to hear the thoughts though. Like, I want to know. I don't know what they think. What the humans out there.
DM me if you want my book list.
All right, everybody.
Maybe I'll come back.
Yeah. All right, everybody. Until next time.
See ya.